There were balloons tied to my wrist. My daughter held a pink box with slightly smudged cupcakes. My son wore a paper crown that read, "Mission, Surprise Mommy." And I stood outside room 814, listening to the sound of a woman laughing behind the door, a laugh I knew too well, except it didn't sound like it was meant for me. My hand hovered over the door. I could hear muffled voices. A man's voice. Her voice. Then silence. I didn't knock right away. Not because I was scared, but because deep down, something ancient in me already knew. We shouldn't have come. This whole thing started 3 nights earlier when Dana said her business trip to Chicago would be a whirlwind of meetings and maybe sleep if I'm lucky. She always said that. The whirlwind part. Not the maybe sleep part. That was new. But I played along as I always did. I'm the guy who believes people when they say they love you. My daughter Ruby, who's 6, Mr. Mom. She drew a picture of our family with a 4th figure beside Dana. I asked who it was. She said, "Mommy's special helper." I laughed. I shouldn't have. The next day, Ruby asked if we could fly to surprise her. "Let's do cupcakes and balloons," she said, and for reasons I still don't fully understand, I said yes. Maybe I needed to prove something. Maybe I wanted to believe everything was fine. Maybe I just wanted my kids to have one of those magical movie moments, the kind where mommy squeals with joy and sweeps them into her arms, crying happy tears because her family is her everything. Instead, we stood in that hallway with deflating helium and the smell of frosting leaking through the box. I knocked. Once. Twice. The laughter stopped. There was a shuffle. Feet. A pause. Then the door opened. He wasn't in a suit. He wasn't in hotel staff uniform. He was shirtless, confused, and holding a room service napkin against his shoulder. He looked at me, then at my kids. Then back at me. Can I help you?" I smiled like a complete idiot. Like a man who hadn't just swallowed every bad feeling he ever ignored. "We're looking for Dana. Dana Winslow." He blinked. Swallowed. And then, to his credit, stepped back and said, "I think you better come in." What I saw inside that hotel room unraveled 13 years of marriage faster than any divorce lawyer ever could. And she didn't even look surprised. She looked tired. Tired of lying. Tired of me. And maybe, just maybe, tired of pretending this wasn't always going to happen. I let go of the balloons. They floated to the ceiling like hopes I didn't know I was still holding. The first thing I noticed when we stepped into that room wasn't the man, though I could feel him shrinking into the corner like furniture that didn't belong. It wasn't the fact that the bedsheets were still half-pulled, twisted like they'd been recently used, or that her suitcase was lying open with clothes that didn't match anything she'd packed. It wasn't even the 2 half-empty wine glasses on the dresser. It was Dana's face. She looked at me the way people look at a spilled drink on a new carpet, irritated more than anything else. Her expression didn't shift when Ruby shouted, "Surprise, Mommy," or when Owen held up the balloon with "We love you," drawn in shaky crayon. She didn't reach for them. She didn't reach for me. She just stared. Then, and I swear this is the part that broke something soft in me, she said, "Howard, what are you doing here?" Not "Oh my God," not "I can't believe you came," not "my babies." Just that. As if I had inconvenienced her evening plans. "We came to surprise you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, knowing it was already too late for steady. "The kids missed you. I missed you." Dana finally looked at the man who was now hastily grabbing a wrinkled polo shirt from the chair. She let out a long, tired sigh, the kind you give when your car battery dies in winter and you just accept it. "This isn't a good time," she muttered, barely audible. "Who is he?" I asked. Ruby blinked up at me. Owen clutched my leg. The cupcake box felt like it weighed 100 pounds in my hands. She didn't answer. The man, to his credit, had the decency to look ashamed. "Look, I didn't know," he mumbled. "She told me she was, separated." Separated. That word slammed into my chest like a steel beam. Separated. From who? When? Since when? I looked back at Dana. "Is that true?" She didn't deny it. She just rubbed her temples and said, "I didn't think you'd come. I told you not to surprise me anymore." "You always do this, Howard." I almost laughed. "I always do this?" What exactly was this? Flying halfway across the country with our children to deliver cupcakes and homemade cards? That's when Owen's balloon slipped from his hand and floated up to the ceiling fan, spinning slowly like it was mocking me. I turned to the kids and forced a smile that made my cheeks ache. "Hey guys, why don't we go down and check out the vending machines, huh? Get some snacks." Ruby didn't move. She looked up at Dana. "Mommy, who is that man?" Dana didn't answer. I crouched down beside her and whispered, "Let's go. We'll talk later." And that's when I saw it, just a flicker, but enough. Dana's eyes darted toward her phone, then back to the man. She was more afraid of what he'd say than what I might feel. That was the moment I stopped being her husband in that room. And she knew it too. I led the kids out without another word. The door clicked shut behind us, and for the first time since our plane landed, the hallway felt like the only place I could breathe. But I wasn't okay. I didn't cry in front of the kids. I didn't shout. I didn't collapse. Instead, I bought them orange soda from the vending machine and sat on the hallway floor while they drank it like it was a party. Because in their minds, it still was. And I couldn't bring myself to take that away from them. Not yet. But I knew something had shattered. Not like a glass, more like a mirror. Quietly, perfectly, in 1,000 invisible ways. And there's no surprise that can glue that back together. That night, we didn't go back home. We didn't check into another hotel either. We stayed in the same building. I couldn't explain why. Maybe it was denial, maybe inertia, maybe something worse. I told the front desk we had arrived for a family emergency and needed a last-minute room on a different floor. The woman didn't ask questions. She gave me a key card and offered us complimentary breakfast. I mumbled something that probably sounded like, "Thank you," but I don't remember saying it. Our room had 2 beds, but the kids piled into one. They were asleep in minutes, maybe from the long day, maybe because they were trying to process everything their young brains couldn't understand. Ruby had her arms around Owen like she was protecting him. I sat on the other bed, staring at the wall, trying not to feel anything, trying not to think anything. But my mind didn't cooperate. It kept replaying Dana's face, that look of annoyance, the way she didn't reach for our kids, didn't cry, didn't even flinch. So I reached for her laptop. Let me be clear, I didn't feel like a hero doing it. I felt disgusting. I've never gone through her things before. I never even looked over her shoulder when she typed. That was sacred privacy, respect, all those invisible threads that hold trust together. But this wasn't about curiosity anymore. This was survival. I needed to know who she had become while I was still calling her mine. The laptop booted quickly. Same wallpaper as always, the picture from our main trip last year where we're all laughing in front of a lighthouse. The last picture we took before things quietly broke behind our smiles. No password prompt. She must have assumed she didn't need one. Her email was open. Her Slack was open. But I didn't even get that far. The browser had 3 tabs left open, and all of them were worse than I expected. One was a flight itinerary to New York for next month. A solo trip. Booked 2 weeks ago. Not with her company's travel account. The second was an Airbnb reservation for a trendy little loft for 2 people. Her note to the host said, "It's our first real weekend away together." Hoping it stays a secret. I clicked the 3rd tab. It was a thread of messages. Not email. Not social media. Just plain old Google chat. Her and Nathan M. The same first name I'd heard the man say earlier when I asked who he was. The messages were recent. Timestamped just hours before we knocked on her door. "Dana, I wish this weekend didn't have to end. With them flying in, it's a mess. Nathan, do you want me to go? Dana, no. I'll handle it." He's soft. He folds when it gets messy. "Nathan, I just don't want your kids seeing things they shouldn't." "Dana, they'll be fine. He'll distract them with snacks and games. He always does." I sat there in the dim yellow hotel lamplight, feeling like someone had taken a crowbar to my chest and wedged it open. Not just because of the cheating. Not just because she lied. But because I realized she never really feared hurting me. She just expected me to absorb it. Like I always did. She thought I'd fold. Again. Maybe I would've. A year ago I would've. Maybe even last month. But reading those words, seeing how small she thought I was, something shifted. I didn't cry. That scared me more than if I had. I closed the laptop quietly and glanced over at Ruby and Owen curled up together like twins in a painting. They trusted me to protect them. To know what to do next. And for the first time I wasn't sure if I could. I just knew I couldn't stay in this version of our family anymore. Not like this. Not after what I saw next, something in Dana's bag that made everything worse. It was around 2:40 a.m. when I finally stood up from the hotel lobby couch. The overhead lights buzzed softly, flickering the way they do in old buildings that have seen too much heartbreak. I couldn't sit there anymore. I couldn't look at the dim glow of that laptop, couldn't reread her words, couldn't watch the kids through the glass elevator one more time like I was trying to protect them from a war zone made of quiet disappointment. I needed answers, not more digital echoes, not more typed-out betrayals. I needed something real. Something that couldn't be denied or deleted. So I did something I never imagined doing. I went back upstairs. Not to her room, but to the housekeeping closet I'd seen propped open near the vending machines on the 8th floor. I waited until the hallway was empty and grabbed a duplicate keycard that someone had left in a folded apron on a rolling cart. It felt wrong, like stealing, but I told myself, if she can bring a stranger into her bed, I can borrow 5 minutes to confront the truth. Room 814. Same number. Same hum behind the door. I listened for a while. No voices now. No laughter. Just silence, the kind that comes after all the lies have been said out loud. I slid the card. The lock clicked green. The room was dark. I could see 2 shapes in the bed. Her silhouette was curled away from him. I didn't go near. I didn't need to see them again. My eyes went to her open purse on the armchair near the window. Half-zipped. Careless. Like she believed she was untouchable. Like she assumed I wouldn't come back. Inside were the usual things: a crumpled receipt from the hotel bar, gum, lip balm, mascara. But at the bottom, underneath a black scarf I'd never seen before, was a small jewelry box. I almost didn't open it. Almost. It wasn't empty. Inside was a silver bracelet with a delicate charm, 2 initials engraved in tiny cursive, N and D. I stared at it, knowing full well that my name didn't start with N. It was polished, new, still sitting in its velvet insert like it had just been picked up that morning. Under the box was a folded envelope with a handwritten card inside. Dana, I know this is only the beginning, but it already feels like everything. Thank you for choosing me. I don't remember breathing. I don't remember how long I stood there holding it like a hot coal, trying not to crumble. I do remember the light on the nightstand turning on. And her voice, quiet, flat, not even surprised. What are you doing here? I turned slowly. She was sitting up now, the blanket held over her chest, eyes half-lidded, expression unreadable. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the bracelet or wave the letter like a flag. I just whispered, is this what it was all for? She didn't answer. I flew our kids across the country to surprise you, Dana. They brought cupcakes. They were shaking with excitement. Ruby wore her sparkly shoes even though they pinch her toes. Owen wanted to give you the crown he made. And this, I held up the bracelet, the charm-catching light, this is what you were doing instead. Dana didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She just exhaled and said, Howard, I didn't ask you to come. It wasn't anger in her voice. It was exhaustion. Like I was the one who'd done something inconvenient. Like I'd broken her perfect weekend with my need to be a family. Behind her, the man stirred. I didn't care. I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't there for a fight. I hope he's worth it, I said. Not as a threat. Just as fact. As prophecy. Because if he wasn't, then she'd burned her whole life down for nothing. I left the bracelet on the nightstand. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. I returned to our floor, to our borrowed room where the kids were still tangled in each other like their small hearts hadn't been shattered yet. I sat down between them and just watched their chests rise and fall. And I realized I had just become a single father in a hotel room without the paperwork, without the custody battle, without anyone saying the words. But that was what I was now. And the worst part? I hadn't even told them yet. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there in the dark, between Ruby and Owen, their tiny bodies warm against me, their breathing uneven, twitching with dreams I couldn't protect them from. I kept waiting for the ache in my chest to dull, for the weight behind my eyes to stop threatening to spill over. But it didn't. It just sat there, heavy and constant, like a knot in a rope right before it snaps. At around 6:15 a.m., Owen stirred first. He rolled over, blinked up at me, and whispered, "Are we going to surprise Mommy again today?" His voice was so hopeful. So light. I smiled, or at least, I twisted my face into something that might have looked like a smile in the right light. "Not today, buddy," I said. "We're just going to hang out, the 3 of us. Maybe find a good breakfast spot." Ruby woke up a few minutes later. Her hair was tangled, her cheek red from sleeping on my arm. She sat up slowly and rubbed her eyes, then squinted at me. "You didn't sleep," she said. I didn't lie. I couldn't. She looked around, confused. "Did Mommy come to say goodnight after we went to sleep?" I froze. Just for a second. Just long enough for her to notice. She always notices. She has Dana's eyes, wide, sharp, impossible to lie to. "No," I said softly. She didn't. Ruby's lips pressed together the way they do when she's trying not to cry in front of her little brother. And then, in the smallest voice I've ever heard her use, she asked, "Are we still a family, Daddy?" It shattered me. Right there, in a 3-star hotel room in Chicago next to a plastic-wrapped phone book and a half-eaten granola bar, my daughter asked a question that even divorce lawyers don't ask directly. The kind of question no child should ever have to form with her own mouth. I pulled her into my lap and hugged her so tight it probably hurt. I didn't care. "We're always a family," I whispered into her hair. "No matter what. You and me and Owen, we're forever." "Okay." She nodded against my shoulder, but I could feel the way she clung to me like a piece of her already knew something was wrong, even if her mind hadn't caught up yet. We got dressed and left the hotel by 7:30. I couldn't stay another second. Every floor, every hallway, every soft ding of the elevator reminded me that Dana was still upstairs, probably ordering room service with him, maybe talking about how to explain away what happened last night. Or worse, maybe not talking about it at all. Maybe just pretending it was still her weekend. I found a small breakfast diner on a quiet corner. We sat in a booth by the window. Ruby ordered pancakes with strawberries. Owen got scrambled eggs and laughed every time the waitress called him sir. I just drank coffee. 4 cups of it. I couldn't taste any of them. I stared out the window and watched the city wake up: joggers, taxis, people who didn't know they were passing by the ruins of my life. The part that gutted me the most was how normal it all looked. Like nothing had exploded. Like I was the only one still hearing the sound. Around 8:45, my phone buzzed. Dana. No words. Just a message: can we talk? I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another buzz. This time longer. A voicemail. I didn't listen to it. Instead, I opened my notes app and began writing a list. Not of what to say to her, but of what I needed to do to survive this. Practical things. Find return flight. Call mom. Look into legal consultation. Tell the kids something. Don't lose it. Not in front of them. Not yet. Then I handed Ruby a crayon and a napkin and asked her to draw something. Anything. Just to keep her focused on something other than the storm starting to leak into her life. She drew a picture of the 3 of us holding hands, standing in front of a house. No mommy. That was when I knew she already understood more than I was giving her credit for. When we got back to the hotel later that morning to grab our luggage, Dana was waiting for us in the lobby. She had changed clothes, fixed her makeup, and for the first time in days, she looked scared. Not ashamed. Not sorry. Just afraid. She looked at me, then at the kids, and opened her mouth like she had a speech prepared. But I didn't let her speak. I walked right past her. Because at that moment, whatever she had to say didn't matter. Not to me. Not anymore. I had kids to protect. And a man to become, one who no longer folds when things get messy. We were waiting at gate C-19 when the weight of it all finally hit me. The kids sat across from me, legs swinging, sipping juice boxes and watching cartoons on a cracked tablet. Ruby's head was resting on Owen's shoulder, both of them still wearing the paper crowns from the hotel's kids' check-in gift bag like it was all still a game. And me, I stared through the terminal window like I might spot another version of myself on the tarmac, one who didn't fly across the country to catch his wife building a life without him. I had held it together for as long as I could. I told myself I had to. I was their dad. They needed steady hands, a calm voice, someone who didn't let the earth-shattering stuff shake the ground beneath them too. But there was something about the airport, the way it smelled like detergent and exhaustion, the way people were always leaving or arriving and never standing still, it broke my ability to pretend. That's when my phone buzzed. Dana again. I had ignored her 5 earlier messages, a few voicemails, and 1 email since we'd left the hotel. She must have realized I wasn't biting because this one came through as a long text. It opened with 3 words I hadn't seen from her in a long time. I'm so sorry. I stared at it. For a long time. Then, like some desperate idiot who still wanted to believe people meant what they said when they used to love you, I stood up and told the kids I'd be back in 2 minutes. I handed Ruby the boarding passes and told her to stay seated no matter what. I walked to the restroom near the food court, locked myself in the handicapped stall, and sat on the closed toilet seat like a ghost of a man trying not to unravel in public. Then I opened the message. I'm so sorry, Howard. I never meant for it to go this far. I didn't plan this. I was just lonely and you stopped noticing me and he made me feel like I mattered. I didn't want to hurt you or the kids. I thought I had more time to figure it out. You showing up like that, I wasn't ready. I froze. I panicked. Please don't hate me. I know I should have told you. But I didn't know how. I still don't. I need to talk to you. Please, when you're ready. I read it once. Then twice. By the 3rd time, my hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone into my lap. She didn't want to hurt me? She thought she needed more time? She panicked? I wanted to scream. To throw the phone against the wall. To punch something. But instead, I just sat there with my face in my hands while the pain crawled up from somewhere deep, somewhere I didn't even know existed. A sound escaped my throat, not quite crying, not quite breathing, just raw, choked noise that no one was meant to hear. Because here's the truth, it wasn't just the betrayal that crushed me. It was the realization that somewhere along the way, Dana had rewritten the story of us in her head without telling me. And she made herself the victim in that version. I pulled myself together, washed my face in the sink, and practiced a neutral smile 3 times before walking back to the gate. When Ruby saw me, she tilted her head. "Are you okay, Daddy?" I nodded. And that was the first lie I told my daughter since this started. The plane boarded. I sat between the kids, their heads leaning into me as the engines roared to life. Outside, the rain streaked across the window like someone was drawing lines through the sky. I opened Dana's message one last time and read the final line again. "Please, when you're ready." But she didn't understand I'd been ready. She was the one who left. She just did it while pretending she hadn't. We landed back in Oregon just before noon. The sky was dull gray, the kind of overcast that sits low on your shoulders and refuses to lift. As we exited the terminal, I held both of their small hands, one in each of mine, and told myself over and over, just get them home. That was the only thing that mattered. No breakdowns, no outbursts, no falling apart in airport parking lots. Just get them back to their rooms, their routines, their beds. And we did. We walked in through the back door like we always did. Ruby dropped her bag on the floor and ran to the fridge to check if the leftover macaroni was still there. Owen headed to the living room and grabbed his dinosaur blanket like he hadn't missed a beat. But I stood in the kitchen and looked around at a house that now felt unfamiliar, like someone had rearranged the air inside it. Nothing had changed. The shoes were still by the door. The calendar still had Dana's handwriting on it, a note about Owen's dental appointment and Ruby's music class. But everything had changed. I just didn't know what to do with that contradiction. I let the kids eat lunch while I took the bags upstairs. I stood at the top of the stairs, staring at our bedroom door. I hadn't slept there in 2 nights, but it felt like years. Eventually, I walked in. Her scent was still there, not perfume exactly, but something softer. Familiar. I hated how comforting it was. I hated how my body still responded to it like everything was okay. The bed was made, her robe hanging off the corner the way she always left it. Her wedding ring wasn't on the nightstand anymore. That's when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps on the front door. Then silence. I didn't move. I knew who it was. Some part of me had been waiting for it. Hoping it wouldn't happen, but knowing it would. The knock came again. Then I heard little footsteps, fast ones. "Ruby." I lunged down the stairs, heart pounding. "Ruby, wait." But it was too late. She had already opened the door. Dana stood there with a small duffel bag and sunglasses perched on her head like it was summer. She looked exhausted and somehow overprepared. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw Ruby standing there in her glitter socks. "Hi, baby," Dana said, her voice sugar-sweet like nothing had gone wrong. "I missed you so much." Ruby didn't move. She stood with one hand on the doorknob, the other clutched around the edge of her shirt. "Why didn't you come with us?" she asked. "We brought cupcakes." Dana smiled gently. Too gently. "I know, honey. I'm so sorry. Things got complicated, but I stepped in then." "Ruby, go inside," I said. She looked up at me, eyes searching, confused. "Button. Now, please." She hesitated, then backed away slowly, her eyes never leaving Dana's face. Once she was out of earshot, I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Dana didn't wait. "Howard, I know how this looks. No," I said, my voice low. "You don't. And I need you to stop pretending you do." She blinked, surprised at my tone. I don't think she was used to me being anything other than patient. Agreeable. Passive. "I want to explain," she said. "Explain what? That you lied to me? To the kids? That while we were decorating cupcakes and tying balloons, you were in bed with another man, one who apparently thinks you're separated?" Her expression shifted. "It wasn't planned like that. I was confused. I was trying to figure things out." "You don't figure things out with hotel wine and monogrammed jewelry, Dana." That hit. Her face flushed. She looked down. I took a deep breath. My hands were shaking. I hated how much they were shaking. "I'm not doing this in front of the kids," I said. "If you want to talk, it's not going to be here. Not now." She looked up at me, then really looked, and for a second I thought she might cry. But she didn't. Instead, she said something I wasn't ready for. "I'm not here to fight, Howard. I'm here because I want to come home." My stomach turned. Home? Like she could walk through the door and pretend the last 72 hours didn't happen. Like her choices could be folded up and put away in a suitcase like a business trip that went sideways. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. And I think the silence said more than I ever could. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered. "I get it." Then she turned, walked back down the porch steps, and got into her car. I stood there long after she drove off. Not because I was waiting for her to come back, but because I needed the cold air to remind me I was still standing. Inside the house, Ruby peeked around the corner. "Is Mommy staying?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not today." Ruby didn't cry. She just walked back to the couch and pulled the blanket over her head. The next few days were quiet. Not the kind of quiet that settles you. The kind that creeps into corners like fog, like dust in old furniture. Dana didn't call again, not right away. No new texts. No long apologies. And for once, I didn't chase her down to get closure she never intended to give. Instead, I focused on what mattered. I took Owen and Ruby to the lake trail that winds behind the elementary school. We picked wildflowers. We skipped rocks. Ruby told me about a dream she had where we all lived in a treehouse and never had to go to work again. Owen said he wanted to be a bear when he grew up. I said I wanted to be one too. We laughed. And I realized maybe this was how healing starts. Not with some big speech or revelation, but with tiny, quiet moments where the pain forgets how to speak. Later that week, Dana texted. A real message. No guilt traps, no pity. Just facts. I've moved into a rental for now. I'll give you space. I want to be part of the kids' lives, but only if you're okay with it. I'll follow whatever arrangement you think is best, Howard. And I truly mean this, I'm sorry for everything. I sat with it for a long time. And I wrote back one sentence. They deserve both of us at our best. So you'll have to be better. That's the only way. No threats. No anger. Just the new rules. We began a slow, cautious co-parenting plan. Drop-offs at the library parking lot. Video calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Therapy not as a couple but as two parents trying not to make their kids carry the weight of our mistakes. And over time, the wounds stopped bleeding. Ruby smiled more. Owen stopped asking when Mommy was coming home and started asking when we could make pancakes again. We built new traditions, new inside jokes, new rhythms that belonged to us, not what used to be. I even started going to the community center's evening writing group. Something Dana once rolled her eyes at, calling it Howard's therapy by poetry. But it turns out writing about pain helps turn it into something less permanent. Something shaped. Something chosen. One day after school, Ruby climbed into the front seat and said, "Daddy, I like our life." I blinked. "You do?" "Yeah," she said, kicking her little legs. "We still have love. Just a different kind." And she was right. This wasn't the life I thought I'd have. But in some strange, messy, beautiful way it became the life I needed. One where I stopped disappearing into someone else's shadow. One where I stood taller, softer, and stronger, not in spite of what happened, but because I chose to grow from it. I didn't fix my marriage. I didn't win her back. But I found my kids. I found myself. And I found peace. That to me is the happiest ending I could have hoped for.